Wow, we are back. J&M Linky Live combo is back, and we're back with a vengeance right here. We got Mr. Beezy, international speaker. We got my good friend Mark Ramsey, and we're sorry. We wanted to reinitiate our LinkedIn lives. We know that you got value. We know that you were impacted by what we did. And from now on, every single week, we're going to have different speakers. We're going to start this game up again because we're all about impact. We're all about giving value. And again, we're sorry, we've just been super busy with our LinkedIn Sales Academy. Um, Getting people leads, booking more calls in the group, and closing more deals like madmen. And so, client delivery is very important. So we took a step back from our LinkedIn lives, but now we're back with a vengeance. So thank you very much for tuning in. We have Mr. Beezy, international speaker based in the UK, who has astounded crowds, up to 500 and more. So he's going to give us some tips and tricks on how to overcome this fear, which is second to death itself. Oh, no, it's number one. It's oh yeah, public speaking is number one, and death is number two, right? So we'll see
Crazy.
how not to die on stage. Awesome, Mark. So kick us off, my friend. Go ahead.
Okay, yeah. First of all, I just wanted to welcome everyone to the room and thank you for joining us on this live, whether you're tuning in the morning, the afternoon, the evening, or the early hours of the morning, depending on whereabouts in the world you are. So do us a favor, just let us know in the comments, like where are you tuning in from right now? Like, are you from London? Are you from America? Are you from Canada? Like, let us know because we would love to hear from you. So if you're interested, this will also be streamed on YouTube. If you missed this right now, we will be sharing a link for our YouTube channel for you to catch up on this live event that we're going to have with this incredible gentleman just here, Mr. Beezy. So the way this is going to work, so what I'm going to do first, we're going to let Mr. Beezy introduce himself. Then we're going to ask a few questions to Mr. Beezy. And then after that, what we're going to do, we're going to have a Q&A from the audience. So if there's any point you have a question that just pops in your mind, just shoot it there in the comments. And then Jordan will pick it up from the comments, and then we'll go back to that at the end of the Q&A session. So we don't want to miss anything. So just make sure you drop the questions in the comments. All right, guys. So Mr. Beezy, take it away. Like, let everyone know what you're about, who you are, like what you do.
Sure. What's going on, my people? It's your boy, Mr. Beezy, based in London in the UK. I've been motivating people now for the last 13 years, will be 14 years this year. And my ethos is very simple. I'm here to inspire your mind, motivate your spirit, and transform you as an individual. If there's one thing I've noticed over the last 13 years is that a lot of people struggle with fears, a lot of people struggle with doubt. And I'm just that person that comes into your life and I reignite that belief in yourself again and give you that belief to go out there and take action, man. So I'm excited to be here. Thank you to Jordan. Thank you to Mark. You know, tonight's I'm gonna be dropping some gems for you guys. Believe that for sure.
Amazing,
What's up?
amazing. I think you nailed it. So great introduction. You mentioned the keyword there. That when I first did my networking event like yesterday, my first live event was actually November last year, where it literally blew my mind. Like, how do you get on stage every time and overcome that moment of anticipation or the moment of where you get overwhelmed, you get the feeling in your gut where you go, oh, I don't want to do this? Does that happen every time, or is that just like the first time?
I think nerves are naturally going to be a part of it. And, you know, I think no matter how experienced you are, you're always going to experience nerves just because every audience is different. But I think
Mm-hmm.
one key thing that helps me to kind of overcome that overwhelming feeling is just being so confident in my content, like knowing my content off the back of my hand, so that I know that actually, do you know what, this audience that I'm about to speak to, they're about to receive value. So I know that the content that I have prepared, it will impact at least one person's life. And I think going into any sort of public talk with that mindset that, hey, I'm just there to touch one person's life is valuable enough for me. One person's life is satisfactory enough for me. I'm content with, you know, impacting one life. that eases the pressure for me personally and allows me to just go there and do what it is I need to do, which is motivate, inspire, and empower my audience for sure.
Okay, so I absolutely love that. So I love the point where you actually speak about impacting one person. So could you elaborate a little bit more? Because that comes back to content as well when we're writing our content, right? So we should be writing for one person or speaking for one person. Does that work the same? Like, can you elaborate a little bit on that?
Yeah, I think naturally when it comes to giving any sort of talk, people can get overwhelmed at times by numbers. And it's like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, I've got 500 people in the audience. I've got to be amazing for 500 people. Well, one thing I've understood is, never seek validation from audience response because,
Mm-hmm.
someone in your audience might have had a bad day. Someone might have received bad news. Some people naturally aren't responsive and just like to sit there and let the message sink in. So if you're speaking and you're looking for validation in your audience, actually that can throw you off. So I've learned to, in my experience, to not seek validation from my audience. And there always tends to be at least one person that's engaged with your talk. So I focus on a few people in my crowd who are engaged. And I know that at least I'm impacting one person with the message that I have. And I think if you just go into any sort of public address, knowing that, hey, no matter how many people are in the audience, that I'm just here to impact one person, it makes a difference because that message you have is going to resonate with more than one person. So whether you're speaking live or whether you're writing content, you know that that message that you have can resonate with at least one person for sure.
Okay, incredible. Like, blown away by that. So it's amazing the way you mentioned about to focus on that one, not to focus on the people who are playing on their phones or they're playing with their hair or they're looking the other way. Like, do you do anything to try and recover that situation? So imagine you were speaking to a room of like 20 students or 20 adults who, and all of them were disengaged. Like, what would you do in that situation? How would you get people back in the room so that they're engaged in the conversation? You're motivating them to be there with you on that journey.
Well, for me, one of the best practices that I use is icebreakers. I
Mm-hmm.
feel icebreakers, you can never go wrong. Now, hear me out. You have to know how to deliver your icebreakers. So don't just think, oh, I'm just going to do an icebreaker. But you've got to do an icebreaker that is universal. And what I mean by that, it relates to any sort of audience, no matter the demographic. So someone like me, if I find that, you know what, I've got this audience and they're just disengaged, they're not responding when I'm asking questions, they're like talking to their friend next to them, I would literally get them out their seats and do an engaging icebreaker, split them up into teams, tell them to select a team captain, and literally get everyone involved. And I find that that works so well. And hear me out when I say icebreaker, your icebreaker doesn't have to relate to your message. Your
Mm-hmm.
icebreaker is just a tool that is there to re-engage your audience. So for me, icebreakers, games, activities where I can get them involved, that's something that I definitely turn to for sure.
Okay, amazing. So those icebreakers. So would you recommend them for someone who's going to be going on stage for their first time? Like, would that be something you would recommend for a novice, so to say, in public speaking?
Yeah, I would recommend just knowing how to do icebreakers full stop because what you don't
Mm-hmm.
want to you don't want to go there and force it because people can tell when you don't know if what you're doing or if you're not confident in the content that you're doing, and that can go for icebreakers as well. You have to know how to deliver the icebreaker for it to have impact. So don't just think, oh, it's a game, it's going to be fun. No, it's only fun if you know how to deliver it properly. So I think that's advice that I would give to someone who's starting out new. Hey, learn about 2 to 3 icebreakers that you can deliver confidently for sure.
So I'm going to intercept here.
Yep.
So for the 42 people watching the live right now, please fire up the chat if you have any questions. We're going to dedicate some time for some questions at the end. So for the 45 people watching the live right now, please fire up the chat. Please tell us where you're from. Please, please, please. The only way that you are going to get benefit from this is by you actually asking that question and it getting answered by Mr. Beezy. So please, okay, go ahead, Mark.
Okay, amazing. So we've got 45 people in the room. So every single person who's in the room, Mr. Beezy, has never public spoken. I know they probably have, but let's imagine they've never
Mhm.
public spoken. So all of these 45 people who are in the room, They want to know how you got started, how did you do it, and how can they replicate that? Can you
Okay,
help
for
us with
me,
that a little bit?
yeah, sure. For me, I was fortunate. I had a friend that was the admin for a company that sent motivational speakers into like schools across the UK, and she was like, "Look, I think you'd be amazing for this company." I was like, "Talking to kids? Nah, I'm good. I'm all right." She's like, "No, no, no. Trust me, like come along, it'll be all right." So I said, with an open mind, I went to go and observe some of the speakers in the company, like give some of their talks. And I'll be honest with you, those speakers really motivated me, and it showed me that what actually the way that they're delivering this sort of talks going across the country, it suits my personality. But what really did it for me, Mark and Jordan, was the first talk that I ever gave. It was the young people coming to me after the talk saying, "You've motivated me so much. You've changed my life." And I was honestly overwhelmed because I was just like, all I did was just keep it real and give you advice that I would give to my younger brother. So if there's anything that I would say to anyone who is starting out and you want to get into public speaking, you want to make a career of this, is number one, know the type of message that you actually want to give. You see, if there's one thing that I teach my coaching clients, it's this: you have to be confident in your content, but you also have to be competent in your content. So, there's no point having confidence, but then you don't know how to articulate your message or how to deliver it. I think the two go hand in hand. You've got to have the confidence, but you also have to know how to articulate yourself as well. So, number one is definitely know the topics. Know the messages you want to speak about. Know how you can articulate your story and how it relates to the messages that you want to talk about. And then understand the market. Is there a demand for the talks that you want to speak about? Know who your target audience is, because speaking can be so broad. So what you want to do is you want to identify a niche. Do I want to speak to school kids? Do I want to speak to people in the corporate industry? Do I want to do more of training? Is it more I want to help with presentations? You just really have to know what aspect of speaking that you actually want to go into first. Then you
Hmm.
have to refine your message, and then there's the other things that come with it. And of course, practice, practice, practice. Because one thing I say to people all the time, we can give you all the tips and skills online, but nothing beats you than being live in person in front of an audience. That is going to be the best teacher for you for sure.
Amazing. I think that last comment kind of summed it all up. Was practice, 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 getting it done, improving every day, putting in the reps and improving as you go, right? So it's about having that motivation and that desire to improve yourself as an individual as well, I think.
Mm.
Okay, amazing. Like, if there's people in the room who are motivated to do it, but they have they have their option, they have their content together, they have their plan together, where do you recommend they first look to do, and what size audience do you recommend they do it with?
I say audience size doesn't really matter. So you can have an audience of 5, you can have an audience of 10. I think the first key thing is just to offer your services for free, right?
Hmm.
Find somewhere local. It could be a church, it could be a youth center, it could be a school, or even if it's a local business, go and offer your services for free. Why? You need work experience, right? You need to get into the practice. You need to practice your introduction. You need to know if you can actually hold an audience attention for an hour span. You need time to test and practice everything you've learned. Content is great, but what happens if you get through all of your content in the first 10 minutes and you've still got 50 minutes left? Knowing
Yeah,
how to
super.
manage your time, right? You learn that through experience. So I always encourage people, look, don't despise doing free talks, because that's what I did as well. I did a lot of free
Mhm.
talks in the beginning. Why? I wanted to get better at the skill of public speaking, but also free talks open doors for paid bookings as well. Because should you go in and smash that free talk, then you've got a client that wants to call you back because they've seen firsthand how good you are.
Awesome. So I had a quick question here, Mark.
Yeah, go ahead.
So we're close to 60 people now in the room, and so my my question is like, let's say if one wants to get into a speaking career? And now that we know that we touched on it, like make sure you maybe public speak for free, but what are some key steps in order to become like a public speaker? Like, let's say if you want to uh, like make a career out of this, what are the easy, simple tips that you have for that?
Okay, real quick. Again, as I say, know who your target audience is because
Mm,
it's kind of hard to get into anything if you don't know who your audience is. Your audience will determine where you're going to kind of direct your energy. So,
mm,
like I said, whether it's schools, corporate, identify the audience that you want to speak to first. Secondly, look at people who are currently doing it in the field. So, who are
Mhm.
speaking to corporate organizations, who are speakers that go into schools and speak, how do they market themselves? Study them online. The great thing about the online space is that all the answers are there. You just have to be prepared to learn. So one thing I did was, okay, cool. How are people marketing themselves online? So what people don't actually understand is, for example, if you want to be a school speaker, a great platform to actually engage and get clients from is Twitter. But
mm,
people kind of negate Twitter. Twitter was where it all really started and where it's still going on. But
Mhm.
people, if you don't kind of take time to research, you will be oblivious to Twitter and you think, oh, it's just LinkedIn, it's just LinkedIn. Yes, there are loads of like education clients and corporate clients on LinkedIn, but trust me, there are also clients on Twitter. So you have to know, first of all, your audience. Now, I know this because I said, you know what, when I first started, my audience is going to be schools. It's going to be schools.
mm.
So I knew Twitter was the place that I needed to be. I needed to be engaging with teachers,
Awesome.
engaging with head teachers,
Wow, this is
engaging in the chats and the forums,
wow,
know
amazing,
the hashtags from Ed Chat
amazing,
to Teacher Five a Day. You have to really
amazing,
like put yourself in there so that you understand the
amazing,
market. So I think
100%.
the key thing when developing your career is really understanding the market that you want to go into, see what other people have done, and then honestly just learn. And don't be afraid to ask questions. One thing I did was I reached out to people.
Yeah.
So, hey, how do you do this? Oh, how did you do that? Oh, okay. And what was their response? Oh, and so one thing I learned very
Yeah.
quickly, don't send emails to schools because they're just not going to respond.
Yeah, exactly.
They're
So,
very big.
Loads of
so,
people.
so
Yeah.
I had another quick question. So, a lot of people that are watching are business owners, like founders, CEOs, and so, um, like a lot of business owners like to let everything go and just let other people have the spotlight. Other people have this like the speaking power. So, what's three, 2 or 3 tips to like motivate these founders to like speak up and enhance their public speaking? Like they need to be front and center of their business, right? So, and some key factors and some key tips that you can, um, well, convey to them.
Sure. I think when it comes to that aspect of things, I think it's very important that you just know why you're doing what you're doing. I think a lot of the
Mhm.
times we get into fields because it looks nice or someone's made it look attractive, but you have to really understand your why and why you want to get into public speaking. It's all well and good say, oh, I want to impact lives, but don't just tell me you want to impact lives, show me you want to impact lives. That's one thing I say to people. Another thing I would say is, it comes with practice again, that knowing how to articulate your message, right? Why this is key is it gives you confidence, right? When you know exactly what you're saying, it gives you confidence. No, this is about fear of public speaking, and a lot of the
Mhm.
fear stems from not being confident in your content. So if you can actually take the time to just actually study and do a deep dive into your content. So there's 3 things that I teach people. This is like, ooh, these are my tricks of the trade, right? Whenever you're delivering a message, right? Here's 3 things that I look into that really helped me in any public talk. I say there's 3 must-haves that you must include in any public speech. So you must give an example when you're talking about a topic. You
Mhm.
must tell a story that it resonates, that relates to the topic, or you must do what I call a how to. and show people how to do something. So if you include one of those three, so an example, a story, or a how to, that is going to make your public talk not only have value and impact, but it makes it easier for you as a speaker to deliver your content. Because, you know, as long as I just touch one of these three key points, I'm going to be able to amplify my voice. So, as a founder, as a business owner, if you know that whenever you give a public address, you just touch on one of those 3 points, you'll be absolutely fine.
Amazing, incredible. It kind of like goes back to the hero's
Amazing.
journey, right?
Amazing.
Like sharing about the hero's journey. We hear about it all the time, how someone went from A to Z in X amount of time, right? I love the way you talk about stories. How do we get across our emotion when speaking publicly? How do we manage to get across our emotions, whether we want to talk softly, we want to talk loudly, boldly? Like, can you explain a little bit about that, about our body language and how we should be perceived?
Sure. I think there's three key things again that I will talk about. And I think number one, the first thing is got to be yourself. What I mean by be yourself is so many people try and put on personas of other speakers that maybe a certain personality that resonates well with a big following, but you are not that speaker. So just be yourself. That is the first key thing. The second thing that you need to do is you need to understand your audience, right? So here's what I'm saying. Here's a practice. Use the power of the pause, right? So I'll give you an example of how you can use the pause, right? My dad's not made an income for the last 16 years. My mum was the person that went and got a second job. So that whole pause after my dad's not made an income over the last 16 years, let that sink in for a moment. Let your audience digest that. And then you can continue your message. And let me tell you something else that is underrated. And trust me, this is not cheesy. The power of music. All right. You can play some music softly in the background. Why do I say this? You got to treat it like the cinema. When you go to cinema, when they want to control your emotions, what do? They play certain types of music. So if they want you to feel anxious, they're going to play suspense music. If they want you to feel lovey-dovey, they're going to play some romantic music. If they're going to want you to feel sad, they play some sad music. So depending on the audience you want to invoke from your audience, play that type of music in the background. So when I do this, so I have a message where it's, I talk about the why, and I'll go deep, and I'll play some movie soundtracks very softly in the background, so that my message can really connect with my audience's spirit. So those are the three things for me.
Wow, amazing. So for the 75 people watching
Wow.
right now, please fire up the chat. Please let us know why you're here. And if you have any questions for Mr. Beezy, please let him know. Now it's your time to overcome your fear. Go ahead, Mark.
Can you elaborate a little bit about body language? Like, how can I be open? How can I be approachable? So I'm quite an approachable guy, I feel, and I'm quite open, and I like to use expressive language with my hands and my emotions. But how can we educate someone who's a little bit more reserved to have that confidence and have that flamboyancy to be able to show up and be confident with their body language as well as their physical, verbal, spoken?
Yeah, I think body language is crucial. You can't come into a public address and you're slouched. Let me tell you why body language is important. Body language communicates how confident you are. So, you have to go there with your chest high. You have to go there with eyes looking with the audience, because should you not have the correct body language, it can literally put your audience off. And for me, body language is kind of linked to energy, right? When you have the correct energy, your body language naturally follows. But if your energy is off, then your body language automatically is going to be off. So I think you need to know how to mesh the two. And it's like, hey, you need to have good energy. And when you have good energy, naturally your body language flows as well. Because Mark, you're like me, I talk with my hands a lot as well. So you just have to have a good balance of energy, and that allows you to have a good stance of body language.
Okay, amazing. So we've shared some awesome tips so far, from body language to knowing your content to understanding how to speak to people, how to overcome your fears. If you miss that bit, to overcome the lack of confidence, you need to know your content. That's what Mr. Beezy said. You need to know your content to overcome your fear of your confidence levels. I think that's a massive one, because I think that's probably the elephant in the room, is that people aren't confident enough to be able to go out there and do this. And then you've also said go out and do things for free, which I think is an absolute mind-blowing activity, because it's really going to help you elevate your game and practice, like you say. So I think that's incredible. I wanted to touch base a little bit about some negatives about public speaking. So some people will say, obviously, sorry, let me start again. Can you perhaps share a time where you didn't feel as confident in a public speaking event, didn't go well, and how you changed it to be a positive? If there is an example, if you do have one.
Okay, yeah. I think early on in my career as a speaker, I was quite ignorant to the speaking industry. So for me, I didn't know about tools and tricks and ways to save yourself during a public talk if you were going to give a talk, right? And I think one of the struggles that I had was, and this is why I made my point earlier about knowing your content, because there were
Mhm.
sessions that I did where I wasn't fully confident in the content. I didn't have enough knowledge. And that led to me not being able to win over my audience, because they could just pick up from my body language. They could pick up from how I was articulating myself that, hey, this guy don't really know what he's saying. So
Mhm.
what that made me do was, cool, embrace the fact that, hey, this talk hasn't gone well, but learn from it. Because I always say failing doesn't make you a failure, giving up does. So I learned very early on that, hey, not only do you have to be confident, but you have to be competent in your content. And that's why I'll always bang on about, you know what, know your content, know your content, know your content. And here's the thing, a lot of people think they know their content, but they don't know how to articulate the content. Oh yeah, I've got a story. Yeah, that's cute, but do you know how to articulate it? So you've really got to know your content and know how to articulate. I'm major on that, and I think if you can do that, that for me anyway, that was one of the major mistakes that I made early on, just being a bit ignorant and
Yeah.
going into public talks, just not having enough knowledge of how I'm going to articulate my message.
So we
Amazing.
actually do got some questions here, if you don't mind
Yeah, of
here.
course, please.
So this one's from Sandra True. So she's like, do you always use slides, or does it depend on how long you're speaking?
Me personally, I always use slides. I think visual representation
Mm,
is very important. You have some people that are visual learners, but don't get me wrong, I don't have a lot on my slides. I like to keep them nice and simple. So I will have the topic and I'll have like a strong image to support the slide. Slides are great, and I also use slides as prompts. So, slides help me to introduce the next topic that I'm going to speak on. So, no matter how long you're speaking for, slides are a great tool to use for sure.
And music, never even thought crossed my mind. Yeah, I was mind blown by that too, man. That
Literally,
was
same.
amazing, man.
The learn.
Music.
Okay, Andrew Morris says he wants to hang out with you again, man.
Yeah, Andrew, man. We'll link up. Don't worry,
uh,
man.
this one's from Jeffrey Manso. Um,
Okay.
what's the best way to get through a talk for an hour when you only have experience speaking up to 30 minutes?
You better go and get some practice. All
Yeah.
right. No. But honestly, yeah, I think the only way, again, having your content right, and this is why I say, look, everything I'm saying, it might sound repetitive, but I always say sometimes it's about going back to the basics. What are the
Mhm.
basics? Practice and know your content. Practice and know your content. If it ain't broke, don't fix it, guys. You ain't got to try and reinvent the wheel. So if you've never spoken for longer than 30 minutes, go and book a 60-minute talk. Go and think about what are some other topics that I am competent in that I can speak about. And you need to now go and deliver that for free. Why? You get the experience, and whoever your audience is, they don't feel hard done by. Why? Because they never exchanged the money for this talk. So for you, it's a win-win situation. They're not losing any money if it's not great, but you get the experience and you know, okay, cool. Do I need to improve? Could I do that better? That went well. great. So I think definitely offer the free talks again, and do it for the length of time that you want to do it for, and then really just think about the topics. And hear this, guys. When you know your topics and know what you want to say, time flies. But let me give you another tip and trick, right? Ask questions, interact with your audience. Because what I do a lot is I always ask my
Powerful.
audience questions, right? And then what
Hmm.
happens is
That's
they
great.
give an answer, and then I flow from the answer from the
Okay.
audience. So that might take 10 minutes. And you do that 3 or 4 times, well, guess what? You've just killed 40 minutes within your talk. And you realize, hey, actually, I'm struggling to get through my slides now. So another great tool to kind of add time to your presentation is to ask your audience questions. And what I tend to do is every time I introduce a new topic that I'm going to speak on, I always ask my audience a question. So, for example, a popular topic is resilience. Hey, what does resilience mean to you guys? Have you guys ever had a time or experience where you have had to be resilient? Get your audience involved. Remember, it's a
Yeah,
public talk and you are allowed to get
amazing,
your audience involved. You do not
amazing.
have to speak at them for an hour. So I like to say my
Mhm.
public talks aren't public talks. My public talks are public conversations. I like to have
Amazing.
a conversation with my audience. So have a conversation with your audience. That's how you can build time for your talk as well.
And
Incredible.
then we have, what train do you think? Book a call with Mr. Beezy, and you get the training.
Yeah,
There
that's
you
true.
go. Simple, right?
I'll give you all the tools and tips, baby.
So,
So
yeah, go ahead, Mark. Sorry. Yeah.
So you mentioned questions, so I really love the fact that you mentioned that because in my time in hospitality, I used to ask so many curious questions and open questions for people at the table or with groups of six, group of two, group of four, discovering more about them. So, what kind of open questions would you suggest, like when you're trying to ice break in that audience? How would you try and get them involved at the beginning stage?
Okay, now this is where knowing your audience is key because
Hmm.
depending on my audience is going to determine the questions. So, for example, everyone knows that I've done loads of talks in schools, spoken in over 500 schools in the last 13 years, right? So, let me tell you some generic questions that I ask students to kind of just build that rapport and get them engaged. So, first question is there anyone here that does not like school? Come on now. There's going to
Yeah.
be at least
Yeah.
one person in that. Yes, I don't like school. Brilliant. Cool. Why don't you like school? The teachers. Boring. Blah, blah. So again, I kind of go off the then I say, another basic. Have any of you ever been to school late before? Yeah, I was late today, and you get all these answers. Cool. Have any of you ever been late to a lesson before? Yeah, 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 yeah. Have any of you ever had a teacher be rude to you? What? Yeah. Have any of you been rude to a teacher? Have you ever come to school before without doing a piece of homework? Right? These are just generic questions. How do I know this? I went
Hmm.
through every single experience of the questions I just asked when I was in school. I saw people who were late. I saw people who came to lesson late. I saw people who were rude to teachers. I saw people who came to school without doing their homework. And I know that that hasn't changed. So that's a great way for me to automatically build rapport with my audience right from the beginning. Why? Because they're thinking about the experiences that I'm
Hmm. Hmm.
on, and already it's making them have a little bit of a giggle, a little bit of and I've won them over. So watch this. Great way to start your talk with opening questions is take your audience through an experience that they've been to that makes them think back. you know.
Yeah.
So if
Hmm.
you're dealing with business people and corporate people, anyone ever had that colleague that just does too much? Anyone ever had a team where they just never invited you out to lunch? Have these relatable questions that can stir some interesting answers,
Amazing.
have a bit of a laugh, and then you can get into your address.
Wow.
Amazing,
Amazing.
amazing. Jordan, do you have any more questions? Or if anyone has questions, just drop them in the chat. Like we'd love to go through some of your
So, so,
questions.
so, like for this one, right here. Um, so, so from Shanice, of course, book a call with Mr. Beezy is the easiest way. But is there like some kind of like like training regimen that you can do like every day to get better, perhaps?
I mean, some people will say you can record yourself and stuff like that, but
Hmm.
honestly, I don't sway from what I say, and that is go and book a free talk. Nothing teaches you better than practice. We can do it's like, and you got to look at it like this: when you're learning how to drive, right? We
Yeah,
do our theory test, but you
Yeah.
physically can't drive a car just by learning the theory behind it. The only way you can drive a car is by doing the practical lessons. And it's the same with speaking. You can get all the theory you want, but you ain't going to be a competent speaker until you actually put yourself in the field and are actually delivering a talk in front of an audience. Guess what recording yourself does? It lets you know what your body language is like, what you sound like, what you do, but it doesn't prepare you for audience interaction. It
yeah,
doesn't
you're right.
prepare you for
You're right.
audiences disengaged, right?
Yeah,
So the only way
100%.
you learn how to deal with these things is by actually doing a public talk. And that's why I say
Exactly.
find somewhere local so it's not impacting you cost wise,
Yeah,
and just do it for free. Why? Because in the back of your mind, you're like, I'm just doing this for practice, I'm
yeah,
doing this to develop. And I think
yeah,
that is the best way to train
100%.
yourself as a public speaker.
Yeah, yeah. Like I have many years of public speaking experience, speaking to crowds up to 2,000 people. And what I just started small. It was like in front of 50 people at a
Mm.
like a work conference, and then I started to scale into more and more crowds. But first public speech I had, no word of a lie, Mr. Beezy and Mark. I repeated the same phrase, which is, isn't that the case? Like 50 times. 50 times. I'm like, what the hell happened, right? So it's all these like idiosyncrasies and all these things that you have to keep in mind, right, when public speaking for
Mm.
sure. So
Mm.
so so thank you, Mr. Bees. I think we're gonna looking towards wrapping up here.
Sure.
So just like amazing information here. I mean, like
Incredible. Incredible.
there's so many tips and tricks in like 37 minutes, and for the well, up to 80 people that have watched this webinar right now. What is like what is the benefit of public speaking? Many people say, "Oh, that's not me," but do you think everyone should be a public speaker and should develop these skills, and why?
I think public speaking is the future. One of the, I'm going to be a bit biased. I'm from the UK. We watch a show called The Apprentice, right? I don't know if any of you watch The Apprentice.
Mm.
And you've got all these educated people. They're so smart. They've got all these business ideas. Where did they fall apart? In the boardroom. Why?
Hmm.
Because they don't know how to articulate themselves. It's the best speakers that tend to go the furthest on that show. Why? Because they're just confident in how, and they know how to speak. They know how to address themselves. So no matter what environment you're in, you need public speaking. If you're a business owner, you need to know how to communicate the services that you're selling, whether it be physically through speech or online through written content, right? It's so important. So I think public speaking is needed because you need it to sell yourself. And actually, do you know what? That's the best way you can communicate your message. We live in an era where AI is fast on growing. So do you know
Hmm.
what? Actually, I get to know the real you through a public speech because hey, I
100%.
can't be duplicated. I'm not an AI. I'm a real person. So I think
Mm,
just
good.
being able to speak publicly, it gives you that power of being able to communicate your message, being able to tell your story, and just being able to communicate with your audience in a way that no one else can, for
Perfect.
sure.
Perfect.
That's
Okay,
incredible.
so
Like
so
literally.
so Mr. Vizzy, how can people get a hold of you if they want more guidance? Like,
Yeah, hit me up, guys.
okay,
Drop me a DM, drop
okay,
me a comment. I'm all over social media, but we're on LinkedIn right now. I'm on LinkedIn. Like, tap me up, man. Go on my profile, DM me. You can book a call with me. I would love to help you guys. One thing I realize it's so important is having the right guidance. And we live in a generation where the people who are thriving are the people who are not afraid to invest in themselves. One thing about me is I'm just gonna keep it real with you. I ain't gonna give you no fancy sales pitch. I ain't gonna tell you no sob story to sell you. This ain't X Factor. I'm just gonna keep it real with you. You know,
Wonderful, wonderful. Tough
to
love,
me,
tough love.
yeah, I'm an expert at what I
Awesome,
do,
man.
and I will
Awesome,
pour my
awesome.
13 years of experience into you.
So,
So,
so I'm gonna share the link down below to book a 30-minute call. So, what can they expect from this call,
Oh,
Mr. Busy?
you can expect genuine help and genuine guidance. I believe at the end of our call, you will have clarity on the direction that you need to go in. So I will help you refine everything you need to do. I'll look at what your struggles are, what you need help with, and I'll highlight things to you that maybe you haven't even noticed for yourself. And I'll give you some suggestions in terms of how to move forward and what actions you need to take and implement from today.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you so much. At the same time, uh, Mark and I are really building our business great. So Mark, did you have any what's going on in your business? Like, did you have any new offers or anything that you want to share?
yeah, absolutely. So we've actually just launched the Academy version 1, which is a coaching program which coaches you through inbound and outbound engagement strategies for LinkedIn to improve your lead generation through public speaking in video, through DMs, through networking, through content, through digital marketing, all of those kinds of amazing things. So if you're interested in that, like just drop a one and we can contact you and let you know a bit of information about how that works. We currently have 18 people in the program. So it's a really interactive group of people all learning from each other. So which is a great way to do it, right, Mr. Beezy? Put everyone in the same place and they
Yeah,
can start to build themselves, right? So
it's
it's
a
it's
really good community, and people are getting wins every day, booking calls, making up to 4K in 2 weeks. It's just like amazing what we have constructed, and looking forward to having like more impact. Of course, we're not perfect. We want to learn, and I always say we learn the most from our clients.
true, true
100%.
from feedback. It's 100% true. I got one
Awesome. Yeah,
question,
go ahead.
Mr. Beasley, before you
Yeah,
go. Before you
yeah.
go, like, should we drop it now? So, myself and Mr. Beasley had a conversation the other day. We're planning an in-person networking event. My business partner Jordan doesn't even know about this yet.
Uh oh.
So if you want to come to that, drop a two in the comments. As soon as we get it organized, we'll put you on the waiting list to come and join us at that in person networking event somewhere in London. We're going to be looking to raise some
Wow,
money for charity. It's
amazing.
all going to be free. We're not going to make any money. We are going to charge a ticket price, but that ticket price is going to be donated to cancer research. So the money is going to go to a fabulous charity. So come and join us. Drop a DM to Mr. Beezy if you want to join that charity event. Drop a message to me if you want to join that charity event, and let's make some money and have some fun, guys. Yeah. So
Yeah, that's
I'm going to leave it on that note. It's a pleasure having you guys, Mr.
last thing
Beezy.
I want to say,
Of
please.
course,
Wait.
please.
For those of you that are ready to take action, I'm doing a boot camp, a public speaking boot camp next month in March. So
Wow.
just drop me a message or write boot camp, drop me a
Awesome.
message. And trust me, this 4 week boot camp is intensive, but it really equips you with the tools. After the 4 weeks, you'll be ready to go and deliver a public speech. You'll know how to price yourself, and we'll help you with
Wow.
becoming visible online as well. So let's
Sounds
come to the
incredible.
boot camp.
Let's
Mm.
go,
Sounds
guys.
incredible.
Well, thank you so much for to the up to 85 people who have attended this live. Absolutely amazing. And guys, this is less than a day and a half that I posted about this, and that I actually made the event in less than a day and a half. We had 85 people attend. That is mind blowing. And no
Appreciate you
doubt,
all. Like honestly,
your influence, Mr. Busy, Mark. Thank you so much for joining us today. And stay tuned for next week, where we're going to have another great live with another great creator that's crushing LinkedIn. So, looking forward to that. And
Cheers, Mr. Beezy.
thank you very much, guys, and we will see you later. Bye bye.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah,